Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 people who died carrying huge secrets.
Number 10. Arne Beurling, cracking the impossible code. In 1940, Europe was in a state of uproar. While the Nazis were continuing their advancements, this time in Norway, the Russians were conducting an offensive operation of their own in Finland. Trapped in the middle, neutral Sweden felt exposed on both sides and thought it necessary to find out what was going on so close to its borders, not to mention what other plans those foreign aggressors might have had. Not wanting to pick a side, though, they opted to listen in order to better prepare themselves for any potential attack that might come in the near future. Tapping into the German communication lines passing through the country on the way to Norway, the Swedes were able to crack the code of one of the most advanced cryptology devices at the time. While the infamous Enigma machines were brilliant in their own right, they weren't the most advanced such devices of World War II. The Germans also invented a more complicated piece of technology called the T-52. This was larger and more complex than Enigma, and only the most sensitive and secret messages were written with it. At first, the Swedes were baffled by the strings of digits coming from the T-52 and called it severely unreadable. That's when Arne Beurling, a mathematician and professor of mathematics, came into play. Not only was he good at his job, but in just 2 weeks after receiving this assignment, he was able to crack it. How he did it, though, remains a mystery. When asked about how he went about it, he simply replied, "A magician does not reveal his secrets." Some 46 years later, he passed away, but he never gave up his secret on how he was able to break it. Some modern-day scientists think they are on the right track, but still haven't been successful. Thanks to Arne Beurling's wits and ingenuity, the Swedes were able to know beforehand Hitler's plans to invade Russia. Number 9. Maurice Ward, the recipe for indestructible plastic. After witnessing an airplane bursting into flames, an English inventor by the name of Maurice Ward decided to design and create a material that could withstand pretty much anything. And incredibly enough, he managed it. What he was able to achieve was a heat-resistant plastic that could endure more than 10,000 degrees Celsius and was resistant to an impact force greater than that of 75 Hiroshima bombs combined. Naming it Starlight, Ward decided to sell his invention to those who could put it to great use. NASA was, of course, extremely interested and invited Ward to present his indestructible invention. Since Starlight was lightweight and could have been shaped in basically any fashion, it would have had an unimaginable impact in revolutionizing spaceflight as we know it. Unfortunately, Ward sensed that some companies might want to profit from his invention without giving him any credit or remuneration, and decided not to part with his most prized possession. In 2011, he passed away, taking the secret of Starlight with him. When asked about it, he just said that it was made up of 21 organic polymers and copolymers and small quantities of ceramics. This, however, wasn't enough for scientists to replicate it. Number 8. Nikola Tesla, wireless electricity. Thanks to the marvel that is the internet, we can save some time by not having to say much about who Nikola Tesla was or what he achieved throughout his life. But for those of us who don't know much about him, Tesla was the man who discovered alternating currents, which was far more practical and safe than Edison's direct current. He's also credited with inventing the Tesla coil, the radio transmitter, and fluorescent lamps, and by the early 1900s was regarded as America's greatest electrical engineer. But for all his worth, Tesla wasn't able to compete with what would have been his crowning achievement, bringing free wireless electricity to the whole world. In 1905, with the financial aid of entrepreneur J.P. Morgan, Tesla began working on the Wardenclyffe Tower, a prototype that was aimed to use both the ionosphere above and the entire planet below as electrical conductors. It would be capable of transmitting electrical energy anywhere in the world. However, the economic instability that hit the United States shortly after construction began ensured that this ambitious project would never come to fruition. When Tesla died in 1943, he more or less took wireless electricity with him. Even though many have tried to replicate his works, all hit a brick wall when studying his notes. Since Tesla relied heavily on his photographic memory, his notes were comprised mostly of sketches and scattered details, offering those who tried to follow in his footsteps little to no aid. Number 7. Jan Sloot, a revolutionary data compression technique. Jan Sloot was a Dutch electronics technician who, in the early 1990s, claimed to have created one of the most efficient data compression coding systems in history. It was able to turn a 10-gigabyte movie into just 8 kilobytes without any loss in quality. The system would have revolutionized data transfer as we know it if it weren't for his untimely death on July 11, 1999. Killed by a heart attack, Sloot was one day short from signing a deal with the technology company Philips, which saw tremendous potential in his invention. Nevertheless, Raoul Piper, a former CTO and board member of Philips, wanted to go ahead with the deal and buy the notorious SLOOT digital coding system. But in another unfortunate turn of events, a key floppy disk that held the secrets to the system went missing, and even after months of diligent searching, it was never found. What actually happened is left to pure speculation. Number 6. Antonio Stradivari, crafting musical instruments to perfection. Even if you're only casually familiar with classical and symphonic music, you're probably at least somewhat familiar with who Antonio Stradivari was and what he did. Stradivari was an Italian craftsman of stringed instruments who lived between 1644 and 1737. Throughout his life, he made around 1,100 instruments, 650 of which are still around today. Of these, roughly 500 are violins. 5 out of 12 of the most expensive violins in the world today were made by him, and the most expensive one, called the Messiah Stradivarius, is worth $20 million. While Stradivari never revealed his secrets or technique, modern scientists equipped with state-of-the-art technology are feverishly trying to figure it out. By making use of scanning lasers, they try to see whether the back or belly of the violin are the reason for their finely tuned notes. Or maybe it's the glues, resins, or varnishes used to give the Stradivarius violins their heavenly harmonies. So far, nobody has been able to figure it out, and it's most likely that it's a combination of all of the above. Number 5. Johann BESSLER, the secret to perpetual motion. In 1712, German entrepreneur Johann Ernst Elias BESSLER claimed to have invented a device that was self-sustaining and able to keep working without any fuel or outside forces. By 1717, he had convinced thousands of people that his invention was truly groundbreaking. In an official experiment, the device is said to have worked continuously for 54 days without anyone tampering with it in any form whatsoever. His device was a wheel, 6.5 feet in diameter, that was capable of lifting several pounds into the air. Among those who witnessed the machine in action were renowned scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers, but none were able to figure out how it worked. BESSLER then demanded £20,000 for revealing the secrets inside his wheel, and the Tsar of Russia, Peter the Great, showed great interest in buying the device. He asked Wilhelm Schravenschande, a professor of mathematics and astronomy at Leiden University, to offer him advice on the authenticity of the device. Unfortunately, BESSLER saw this and believed it to be an attempt at stealing the machine's secrets to perpetual motion and immediately destroyed it. He died in 1745, never revealing the secret of his invention. A device like this clearly violates the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy can never be created out of nothing or destroyed, so this begs the question of how it actually worked. Scientists today are trying to figure it out by looking through BESSLER's notes, but so far to no avail. It's also a possibility that he fooled everyone and his device didn't produce perpetual motion, but even that would be interesting to see how it was achieved. Number 4. ARSENE GOEDERTIER, location of a stolen painting of incredible value. The Ghent altarpiece is an incredible piece of artwork dating back to the early 15th century and was commissioned by Hubert van Eyck, about whom little is known. Many art specialists believe this to be one of the most important paintings in the world and arguably the most often stolen. It also managed to escape several fires and riots throughout the ages and was even able to find its way back after being taken by Napoleon. However, during a moonless night in 1934, 2 men were seen outside St. Bavo's Cathedral in Ghent carrying an object resembling a panel and then climbing into a car and driving away. The next morning, the theft of 2 of the 12 panels that comprised the Ghent altarpiece was reported. Soon after, the Bishop of Ghent received a ransom letter asking for 1 million Belgian francs, and a series of letters was sent back and forth between the thief and the bishop. As a gesture of good faith, the thieves gave back one of the stolen panels, St. John the Baptist. However, the correspondence stopped soon after that. In a seemingly unrelated sequence of events, a stockbroker by the name of Arsène GOEDERTIER asked to meet in private with his lawyer after suffering a stroke and was laying on his deathbed. He told the lawyer that he was the only one who knew the location of the last missing panel and pointed towards a wardrobe, saying something about a key that opened a drawer, and then he immediately died. The lawyer opened the wardrobe, found the key and unlocked the drawer, only to find carbon copies of the correspondence between the bishop and the thieves. There was also an unsent note which had a line that translated to, "No one, not even I, can recover the judge's panel without attracting public attention." What this meant, nobody knows. It could imply that the missing panel might have been hidden somewhere in plain sight or in a public space or building. The case of the missing panel is still open today with the Belgian police. Number 3. Texas Governor John Connally, the Kennedy assassination. There have been countless theories about what really happened on that fateful day of November 22nd, 1963 in downtown Dallas, where President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in broad daylight. What is less known and discussed about the attack is that Governor John Connolly was also injured but managed to survive. He was seated in front of President Kennedy at the moment of the shooting, and the Warren Commission version of events states that a lone gunman shot a single bullet which managed to kill both the president and seriously wound the governor. Conspiracy theorists beg to differ and bring some compelling facts to the table. According to how the seats were arranged inside the car, it would have been impossible for the bullet to injure Governor Connolly and hit the president, since that would have meant for the bullet to change direction mid-flight and zigzag through the air. Some further evidence was also brought up implying that there was a second bullet fired. Even the governor himself swore that he couldn't have been injured by the same bullet, even if he believed Oswald acted alone. The best way to put the matter to rest would be to compare the fragments that are still in the governor's wrist with the infamous bullet itself. After Connolly's death in 1993, a petition was signed asking for his body to be exhumed and the fragments analyzed. His family, however, refused, and thus the secret of whether there was only one or more bullets is buried with the governor. Number 2. Edward LEEDSKALNIN moving tons of stones as if by magic. Edward LEEDSKALNIN was a Latvian immigrant to the United States who from 1923 until his death in 1951 built Coral Castle in Florida. He was about 5 feet tall and weighed a mere 100 pounds, but was somehow able to move stone blocks weighing up to 30 tons. He always worked alone and would never let anyone see him while doing so. The only eyewitness sighting of him working is from 2 teenagers who said the blocks seemed to float like helium balloons. Others said that they spotted some of his equipment, which comprised of a tripod of logs and some ropes. But they also insisted on adding that both the ropes and logs didn't look strong enough to lift those tremendous weights. He also made use of a small device in a black box which he simply called a perpetual motion holder. After his death in 1951, his Coral Castle became a popular curiosity for visitors. In 1986, a 9-ton revolving door that was so perfectly balanced that a small child could easily move it around stopped working because the hinges had rusted. It took 8 workers and a 50-ton crane to remove and reinstall it, but they were unable to put it back the same way LEEDSKALNIN had. LEEDSKALNIN claimed to have figured out the secret of how the Great Pyramids were built, but unfortunately, he never did share his secret with the rest of us. Number 1. Jerome of Sandy Cove. Nobody knows. On the 8th of September, 1863, a man was found on the beach of Sandy Cove, Nova Scotia. Nothing particularly striking so far, but this man had both legs cut off just above his knees and bandages over his wounds. When asked about his name, the man was only able to utter a few words and sounds that loosely sounded like Jerome. So that's what people began to call him. He never spoke after that and was only capable of making animal noises. This seemed to indicate a probable brain injury. Over the years, Jerome became somewhat of a local personality, with people from other places paying to have a chance to see him. He eventually died in 1912 without telling anyone who he was, where he came from, or even what happened to his legs. So great was this intrigue that his memory endures in Nova Scotia, fascinating people well into the 21st century. There have been books written about him, and even a movie was filmed in 1994 called Jerome's Secret. He may not have actually had anything to say, but given the fact that he didn't say anything at all, it drove people to all sorts of wild speculation. While this video was comprised in no particular order, we did however believe that Jerome deserved the number 1 spot for one particular reason. Since there was little to no information about this man to begin with, his persona was blown out of proportion by others who've imagined all sorts of stories about him. This stands to show how curious people are and how determined we are to give every question an answer, regardless of whether the answer is right or wrong, or if the question needed an answer in the first place.
So I really hope you liked that video. If you did, please do hit that like button below and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.